Today I'm going to show you how to build any size tote rack. First I'll tell you how to find the dimensions you'll need, then I'll show you how to measure and make your cuts, and finally how to assemble it. But let's start with the concept of exactly what it is we're building. Essentially it's two frames that are made up of vertical and horizontal 2x4s. They're connected by the supports that also hold the totes, and that's it. It's not rocket science. Now I'm only using 2x4s for this build, and it's important to note that modern 2x4s are actually only 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So remember that for your plans. You're building with a 2x4, but you're measuring for a 1.5 by 3.5. Now I'm using the HDX bins from Home Depot, but these plans should fit a variety of brand totes that I've listed below in the description. And I also want to mention that these have become so popular lately that you can buy this for not much more than the cost of making it. So if you get through this video and realize this isn't a project you want to take on, I'll include the link for that below in the description as well. But let's start with how you find the overall dimensions of the rack, which is simply your length times width times height. Now when we take into account the sides of the studs, we need roughly 22 inches of width per bin. That's measured from the start of one stud to the start of another stud. The interior spacing is 20.5 inches, but don't let that confuse you. For now, just know that you'll find your length by multiplying 22 times the number of columns that you want plus 1.5 inches. This length is the same measurement of the 2x4s that you're going to cut for this frame. So for mine, I have 2 columns, which is 22 inches times 2, which is 44. Add 1.5 inches, and it gives me 45.5 as my overall length. If you had 5 columns, then you would do 22 times 5, which is 110, plus 1.5 gives you 111.5. Make sense so far? Now our width, or the depth in this case, is always going to be 30 inches. This is really easy to remember that no matter how big you're building your rack, the supports for this are always going to be 30 inches. This will also be the same measurement of the 2x4s that you're cutting for these supports. Now for the heights, you need roughly 17 inches per bin with a little bit more at the top. So your height is going to be 17 times the number of rows that you want plus 4 inches. This is your overall height of the frame. We get this number by starting our measurement from the bottom and measuring up every 17 inches for the number of bins high you want, or the number of rows that you want. Since you need a little bit of room at the top to get the bin out, we have an extra 2.5 inches plus 1.5 inches from the top of the frame, so that's where the 4 inches comes in. So for mine, I have 4 rows, which is 17 times 4, or 68, plus 4, so it gives me 72 inches for the total height of the rack. Now again, this is the overall height of your project or your rack, but in order to get the correct measurement for the cut that you need of this vertical piece, you're going to subtract 3 inches from this number. And conceptually, this is easy to understand. If we know that there's a 1.5 inch frame at the top, and our vertical piece is sitting on another 1.5 inch frame at the bottom, that's where our 3 inches come in. So if we know the overall total height, we can just subtract out 3 inches, and it gets us the length of the vertical piece that we're going to need. Now when it comes to making your cuts, I mentioned that your length and your width measurements can be the exact same measurements and lengths as the 2x4s that you're going to use for the project. So 45.5 inches is my length. I'm going to need 4 of them. Why? Because I have one at the top of my frame, one at the bottom of my frame, and I need 2 frames. 2 times 2 equals 4. Now the number of supports you need is easy as well. Again, I mentioned that they'll all be 30 inches no matter the size of your rack, and you're going to need 2 of them per bin. I have 8 bins, so I need 16. If you have 100 bins, you need 200 30-inch supports. So my overall height is 72 inches. I'm going to subtract out 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches, and that gives me 69 inches for my total height. Now for each frame, you'll need 1 more vertical piece than you have columns. So I have 2 columns, I need 3 pieces per frame. If I have 2 frames, that's 3 pieces per frame, or 6 total vertical pieces this size. If you had 5 columns, then you would have 6 vertical pieces. 6 times 2 equals 12. You would need 12 of these vertical pieces. Now that we have the size and the number of the 2x4s we need, let's put them together. You can use a chop saw or a circular saw to make these cuts. We're using 2.5 inch and 3 inch deckmate screws with the star bit, pairing that with the Craftsman cordless drill, a 3-foot level, and I use a laser level at the beginning just to make sure my initial supports are off to a good start, but that's optional. Starting from the bottom of the frame or from the ground, Go up every 17 inches and make your mark. This is where the location of the support is going to sit. It's easy to do all of your vertical pieces at once for consistency and for time purposes instead of having to do each one individually. It's also an important reminder to know that your vertical piece starts on top of your horizontal 2x4 and you're measuring from the bottom of the ground or from the bottom of that 2x4 up 17 inches. Start by assembling the outer part of the frame first, then inserting the vertical pieces. You want to make sure that your four corners are 90 degrees or else you could get to the end and not have a perfect square. So continue to check it with a speed square or some other 90-degree angle. Next, you'll insert your vertical pieces and the distance between them is going to be 22 inches. The interior spacing should be 20.5 inches, but center of the stud to center of the stud should be 22 inches. And no matter how many columns you have, if you've measured correctly, they will all fit in perfectly. Continue to check your work with a square or some sort of right angle. This is important because when you get to the end, you want all of the totes to sit flat and fit in correctly. But you're going to make this frame twice, and now the hard work is basically done. Stand up the frame and we'll start adding the tote supports. First, I secured a support down at the bottom to make sure my corners are straight, and again, everything will be even. I'll remove these later. But to add the support, the top of the 2x4 should sit at the 17-inch marker. Now, after securing the bottom, I did go up and I secured one in the middle, and then I started from the top and I worked my way down. I used the 3-foot level to ensure each support is straight across with the next column, and now it's just rinse and repeat. I put 4 screws into each support, 2 on each end, and that's more than plenty to hold what's going to fit in these totes. And that's basically it. You'll notice that I customized mine a bit, and I encourage you to do the same. I could have gone up higher and over further, but for me I wanted some shelf space for random sized items and for my other oddly shaped things. I secured the 2x4s to the studs on the wall, and then I added some OSB to the top and the side. This is going to allow me to add hooks and shelves next to it, further utilizing the space. And that does secure it to the wall for me, so I absolutely encourage you to secure yours to the wall, to the floor, ceiling, or somewhere else as well. The larger these get, the more wobbly they're going to be, the less stable they are, the more heavy or the more things that you're starting to put in these totes, the stronger the likelihood it is of collapsing or falling over on somebody. So it absolutely needs to be secured somewhere, preferably to the back wall. But that's it. I hope this was helpful. Reach out anytime with questions or concerns, and have a great day.